for the time being, be run by a team of government commissioners as the entire council cabinet walked away from their roles after being branded not fit for purpose in a damning report on the catalogue of abuse suffered by 1,400 girls. So what will that mean for democracy in a town that's been scarred by scandal? Here's Len Tingle.
We'd been expecting the winds of change in Rotherham, a town ripped apart as evidence has grown of young girls groomed, assaulted and raped, with the local council unable or unwilling to do anything about it. But few expected this.
Good evening, we're live in Rotherham tonight, a town without a council.
Rotherham Council is found to be in complete denial.
The entire council cabinet collectively resigned.
This was the Casey report, released on Thursday, that created these shockwaves. An investigation by expert in local government Louise Casey that revealed a Rotherham regime so badly managed that it was not just incapable of protecting its children from savage gangs of rapists, but unable to run the council at all. Years of bullying, sexism, and rather than overcoming problems, covering them up.
I feel a profound sense of disappointment that there are people in the public sector, in public service, that didn't do a good enough job. We collectively, in the public sector, let the children of Rotherham down.
This was the ruling Labour Party's routine cabinet meeting in the town hall on Wednesday, just hours before the report was released. Later that day, they'd all stepped down. The government will now bring in 5 top civil servants, commissioners, to replace them. By Thursday, on a visit to Yorkshire with the Chancellor, the Prime Minister was making it clear that those commissioners will run the council as they see fit, and councillors will have no say in the matter.
Well, that's true to an extent. I mean, the point is this council has failed, the leadership has failed, they've now all resigned, they've effectively been replaced, and the commissioners come in to make sure the council is run properly and services are run properly, including services to vulnerable children.
The government's idea in taking this drastic action, take politics out of the running of Rotherham for a few years in order for the council to put itself in order. Well, if it thought that politics was going to disappear from Rotherham, it's got another thing coming. 2 days after the cabinet resigned, this happened.
Say no to Farage's racism. Say no to Farage's bigotry.
Anti-racism protesters gathered outside UKIP's Rotherham general election campaign headquarters.
Listen, before they understand bigotry, they need to know how to spell it.
But Friday's demonstration led to Nigel Farage cancelling a planned launch ceremony outside in front of the converted shop. Inside, the party leader was on a familiar theme. The huge Labour majority on the council had caused the problem, and he has what he says is a practical answer.
Eric Pickles has stepped in, is going to appoint commissioners and suggest there should be elections in Rotherham in 2016. And my response to that is, well, actually, a third of the seats in Rotherham are being contested on May the 7th anyway. Isn't it about time the people of Rotherham decided what to do? I think, we're calling for full council elections to take place on the same day as the general election.
But were all these shocks this week so unexpected? Sunday Politics reporter Liz Roberts flagged up cover-ups by officials 6 months ago, and a lawyer acting for victims of sexual abuse says his research before launching legal action shocked him.
I was staggered. I kept pinching myself to work out how can this be happening in the same place for such a long period of time. And obviously Louise Casey's report has drawn the strands of that together and worked out and identified the system failures in the council.
That leaves Rotherham Council now looking forward not just to Whitehall commissioners taking over, possibly for years, but potentially billions of pounds in damage claims.
Len Tingle with that report. Sarah Champion, do you agree with Nigel Farage when he says all-out elections in Rotherham should be brought forward? They shouldn't happen next year, they should happen this year, so the town can clear the air and start to move on.
No, I don't, because I think that would just make the politics come back into this place. What we've got at the moment is the commissioners are going to be running the town. It's not going to be the council anymore, it'll be the commissioners. What we've also got is we have got local elections. Labour hasn't selected any of its candidates yet because it rigorously wants to get the best people for the job. So Rotherham people will have the opportunity to vote for the people that they think will do the best job.
But why not have all-out elections this year. I mean, the town is desperate for a change, isn't it? The people of your town.
I completely agree, and I think that we do need to draw a line under this. What I worry about, though, is if we have all-out elections, we'll then have a power vacuum. We'll have a lot of, 60 councillors that have no experience whatsoever, and what we ought to be doing is seeing how we can come together to support those commissioners to get the job done.
Cavan Vines, you're the opposition group leader on Rotherham Council. I mean, how do you effectively run an opposition on a council which isn't a council, it's being run by the government?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the commissioners, they're replacing the cabinet, but these commissioners are making decisions. I don't care what Cameron said. We're elected members, and I'm elected to represent the people of Rotherham. And if I think they're making bad decisions, then I will challenge it. And that's what I'm paid to do as a councillor, and that's what I'm elected to do. So I don't care who's running the council. If I'm still in opposition, then I will challenge it like I've been doing for the last 9 months.
I mean, Sarah Champion, you say you want to take the politics out of this scandal, but this scandal is every bit about politics. It was highlighted in Louise Casey's report. A council where it had a culture of bullying, political correctness, where people were afraid to suggest that ethnic minorities were responsible for many of those crimes. That's every bit about politics, isn't it?
For me, that's every bit about a failing council. That's about
a Labour council.
It was a Labour council, but the council workers, I don't know how they voted. And, what I want to see is justice for the people that were let down. So that's the victims and the survivors that we need to be focusing on. And the more this becomes a political, ping pong that we're batting backwards and forwards, we're not focusing on the real issue, which is getting the resources in place to enable the people that have been most let down to rebuild their lives.
Well, Labour are accusing UKIP of exploiting the scandal for political gain. How do you respond to that?
We're not exploiting anything at all. What we're doing is we've proved without a doubt, once there's any type of opposition, which there has been for 9 months, we've got 10 councillors in there, and 7 of them councillors were new. I'll tell you, they're up to speed now, and they got up to speed very, very quickly.
But why weren't you, you were challenging decisions, and that's absolutely right, and that's your role. But I also think your role, when you knew what, a catastrophe was going on, you haven't put forward any motions around moving forward on child sexual exploitation. So surely that is your role as well. Rather than just laying blame on Labour, you were there for a year.
I have put motions forward.
Well, you haven't. I've been through all of the minutes.
I put a motion forward.
Could I speak now, please? And then in the Casey report, page 77, it says that the opposition councillors woefully failed in any form of scrutiny or challenge around child sexual exploitation. So that's someone completely independent saying that.
Well, we have put motions forward in November.
Not in the minutes, you haven't.
In November, I'm sorry, Sarah, but in November, the council chair meeting in November, I put 2 motions forward. One, and I said that the cabinet was unfit for purpose, and it should. Let me finish, please.
About making it better
let me finish,
for the
please.
victims and survivors of child abuse.
Let me finish. We put a motion forward to actually disband the cabinet because it was not fit for purpose. It was unscrutinised. You couldn't scrutinise it where the setup was, and we wanted it to come back to a committee system where it could be scrutinised. And as far as challenging sexual exploitation, we did challenge that. Right. But you need to be in that council, Sarah. You can't sit outside. Be in that chamber.
Sarah Champion, did you know Rotherham Council was in denial? The word used by Louise Casey in her report was in denial about the scale of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham.
Yes, I did.
So why did you not blow the whistle before the Casey report?
From the J report, which is 6 months ago now, I've been reporting council officers, both to the police. I've been reporting them for disciplinary action to the IPPC for neglecting duties. I've been working with victims and survivors to try and get the support that they need. So I very actively have been. Up until on a national level, I've even changed the law around this because this is a national issue and needs to be tackled accordingly.
But why did it take an independent report from Louise Casey to come in and sort Rotherham out? Why couldn't you and the other MPs in Rotherham have gone to the government and say, this council needs replacing sooner rather than later?
I did. If you look on my parliamentary record, I spoke to both David Cameron, to Theresa May and to George Osborne, all saying that something dramatic needs to happen here because this is a failing council, and unless extra resources come in to challenge the rot that's going on, nothing is going to get any better.
Let's hear from one of the victims of the Rotherham grooming scandal. Emma, not her real name, was first targeted by a gang when she was just 12 years old. 12. Her shocking story is just one of many to come to light in the town in recent years.
Pushing my head on the floor and that, and grabbing my neck and stuff and pulling me by my hair. I were saying that I didn't want to do it and stuff, and he said, of course you want to do it, and that he don't like girls saying that no to him, and he don't accept it when they say no.
There are two of you, two parents trying to make a living, and you have a daughter that you love falling apart in front of you in the most horrific circumstances. It affects all aspects of your life.
You think the police will step in, you think social services will help you, you think all that would make arrests more likely. That's what you think, but that's not what happened.
And Emma's here with her dad, John. Emma, thank you for joining us on the Sunday Politics today. We've heard about the political fallout of this week. In your opinion, as a victim, what needs to happen now?
I think now there needs to be support put in around victims and survivors, because there's not really been any support at all. And this is something, you know, support is a big part of being able to move on and deal with the trauma of what has happened to you. So support, the victims and the survivors want the support, and I think now, you know, once we start getting support and also start looking at getting justice as well, because that is so important, that when somebody's done something so terrible to you, that you do want justice and you deserve justice. And then I think when we've got to that point, we can start moving on and we can look forward to the future. Well, that's interesting. You talk about justice. John, we know the National Crime Agency is investigating events in Rotherham. Would you like to see councillors in the town and council officials in the dock?
Yes, we would, and I think that we'd also like a meeting with the National Crime Agency if we could, because obviously we've not been contacted by them at the moment, and we think that we should have the councillors in the dock, because obviously we feel that they've perverted the course of justice and they've not carried out their duties in public office.
Sarah Champion, 1,400 victims, according to Alexis Jay's report, at least in Rotherham. How many prosecutions? Just one prosecution of a criminal gang. It's obscene, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So how can the people in Rotherham, how can people have confidence that those in public roles are brought to justice when the criminals haven't been brought to justice?
Well, that's exactly what I've been arguing. I mean, the situation we are in at the moment is just a perpetuation of the nightmare. From speaking to many of the victims and survivors and looking at the work that Emma's been trying to do, the police have consistently let them down, failed them, and many say it's a second form of abuse what they have to go through.
Emma, has that been your experience, that you're still not taken seriously by those in authority in Rotherham?
I think not by all, but by some, yes. I think the police this time round have improved, although they can still make improvements. But I think when it comes to, you know, the council, we still haven't been taken seriously. Survivors haven't at all, and in fact, not taken seriously, but still basically being made out to be liars, that we've made all this up.
John, I know you've been speaking to other victims this week. Obviously, they've taken a keen interest in the case you report. What are they now saying should happen?
Well, obviously, we're all singing off the same hymn book, really. I think that what we've also got to look at this is that we're talking about numbers here, and it was 1,400. Obviously, I think you could actually put them numbers up by fivefold, because we're forgetting about all the families and the siblings who have been involved in all this. But it's not about the numbers, it's about getting justice, and we want justice. Obviously, we want the perpetrators prosecuted, and I think we also need the councillors prosecuted, because they've not done the job properly, and really they perverted the course of justice, so we can't get justice at the moment.
Kevin Vines, the suggestion that what happened in Rotherham certainly isn't unique, and there are many other town halls across Yorkshire, across the north of England, where councillors and officials effectively turned a blind eye to grooming. Do you believe that is the case? And if so, would you like to see government hit squads sent in elsewhere?
Which is the case. It's certainly the case. This is not unique to Rotherham. It's all over the country. I mean, that's quite obvious. And yeah, I mean, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But what we've got to do, choose which political power is in place in councils, whether it be Conservative, Labour, whoever. They all tend, if they're in the power and they've got the massive majority, like Labour had in Rotherham, then it is unmanageable. You cannot, it's unscrutinisable.
And that's one of the criticisms, isn't it, of Rotherham, that it effectively was a one-party state for so many years. People always voted Labour. That was not healthy for democracy.
I think basically what happened was, and we're still seeing it now, what happens down in London is seen to be the important stuff, and as long as, you know, all of us up here keep quiet, then the government doesn't get involved at all. And that's still going on now, because we're still not getting the resources in place. It's great we've got the commissioners, but we're not getting the on-the-ground help to enable this to go forward. And can I just say one thing? I think people need to understand that the only reason that all this came to light is because people like Emma and her dad and the other, you know, victims and survivors kept on going, and we can't understand the strength that that's taken to do that, and they've brought this change about, and I think that shows that democracy does work. They just shouldn't have to have suffered so much to get it.
Yeah. I mean, Emma, one of the key features of the Casey report was this idea, this suggestion of misplaced political correctness in Rotherham Council, that the authorities didn't want to tackle this problem because the majority of the perpetrators were from a Pakistani heritage background. Do you still believe that is a problem, or have we moved on from that?
No, I still think it is a problem, and especially if you're a victim or a survivor, because as a victim, I was made to actually feel that if I said my perpetrators were Asian, that I was racist. And still even now it's as though we can't talk about the perpetrators. So we can talk about what's happened to us, but we need to be careful when we're talking about perpetrators. So that, you know, that pressure and that feeling is still there.
And is that your experience, John, that actually that's why a lot of the victims weren't taken seriously, because, as Louise Casey put it, there was this misplaced political correctness?
Yeah, I do believe that as well, and I think that we need to realise that what culture has done this or who's done this, obviously, they need to be prosecuted. It doesn't matter whether they're white, black, pink or yellow, does it? It's the crime that they've committed, and why put political correctness in front of all that when we're talking about protecting children here?
So let's move on. What will Rotherham look like? You're going to have these all-out elections in 2016. How will Rotherham restore its battered reputation, Kevin Vines?
Well, first of all, it wants strong political leadership. That is a fact. That's what's been lacking for a long time. It wants to be open and transparent, and that's what it certainly wants. But what it really wants, and I'm actually, as the opposition, I'm putting an alternative budget together. And part of that, and I've talked to victims' families, and I've asked them what it is they really want. And basically, we want to bring a risky business type thing back, where the people can go...
This was a charity to help victims?
Yes, and it was one what was working, one which actually brought it out in the open at the first and started helping the victims. That was closed down. The first thing I'm doing is bringing funding from within the council, because we can't get it from outside, to actually bring that back, and that will give confidence to the victims to come forward and feel but they can come forward.
And Sarah Champion, David Cameron told Look North this week that funding wouldn't be an issue if it did help the victims. So what are you looking for post-2016 when the council is reinstated?
I think what we need to do is judge the council and the police on the results. We've lost an awful lot of trust, so what I want to see is, as Cavan rightly said, we need some sort of youth-led support service, both for the young people but also for the older people that have been victims of this crime, so that they can come forward. Fundamentally, what I want to see, though, is a complete shift in attitude within the council. So, for example, in child services, they should always be questioning, is my action protecting and supporting the child and enable them to grow, not is my action meeting a target, meeting a policy objective. And I think that cultural shift is going to be a very difficult thing to achieve. I think it's possible, but I think we're all going to be watching, and actually, where we do agree, both Cavan and I will be scrutinising.
Emma and John, do you have faith in the politicians to get this right?
Yeah.
Be honest.
yeah, I do, but I think that it's also victims and survivors who need to be leading with that as well, because after all, they're the experts, and they know what works, what doesn't, and what they need and want. So yes, I do, but I think that also victims and survivors need to be, in there and probably consulting on that as well, and airing their views and opinions.
John, do you have faith in Rotherham politics going forward?
Well, I do have faith in Rotherham politics going forward now, because it will be a change, I should imagine. And I think exactly same as Emma has said, is that we can work together, we need to work together, and we need to take into account the parents as well as the victims and survivors, listen to what they're saying. As Emma says, they are the experts, and we've been there, we've seen it, and they need to listen to us in the social services department as well as the police, and not judge these people without really knowing what they are about themselves.
We're going to have to leave it there. A very different programme this week. Obviously, we knew this was an important subject. We had to do it justice.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for your time today. To Emma, to John, to Sarah Champion, and to Cavan Vines. And with that, we'll go back to Andrew Neil in London.